My name is Nora Hale, 36, mother to a seventh grader who wears mismatched socks and notices things adults would rather ignore. I never thought I would start my story with numbers on a screen. But that morning, that's exactly what happened. The balance in our daughter's college account didn't fade. It collapsed, plummeting down to zero, like the sound of glass breaking in another room. It was so sudden, I thought it had to be a mistake. I refreshed the app 3 times, as if the truth would change if I clicked fast enough. It didn't. The kitchen smelled like the last cup of yesterday's coffee, still cold in the pot. The sun stretched a weak arm through the blinds, landing on a note Dylan had left on the counter. His handwriting looked rushed, like someone signing a receipt for something they shouldn't be buying. It said he needed time. People who write that they need time usually mean they've already taken something that wasn't theirs to take. Beside it lay his spare keys, neat and deliberate, a punctuation mark on the end of a marriage I hadn't realized was already a draft. I sat down hard, phone clutched in my hand, my stomach hollowing out. Every vacation we skipped, every pair of shoes I told Mia she could grow into next year. Instead of this one, all of it had gone into that account. All of it vanished overnight. I should have been furious, but the shock pressed down heavier than anger. I couldn't even find my voice. That's when Mia walked in, hair loose from the braid she slept in, eyes sharper than her age allowed. She glanced at the screen before I could hide it. Her face didn't crumple, didn't break. She looked at me as though she'd been rehearsing for this moment in silence. "Mom," she said softly, like she was telling me a secret meant only for us. "Don't freak out." I handled it. For a beat, the world tilted. A 12-year-old isn't supposed to say words like that with the weight of someone twice her age. I wanted to believe she was just trying to comfort me, but her gaze held steady. It was the kind of look you give when you're not bluffing. In that instant, with the kettle beginning to hiss behind us and the silence of an emptied account screaming louder than any alarm, I realized my daughter knew something I didn't, and that scared me more than the zero staring back from the screen. The kitchen clock coughed over to 6:41 a.m., and the house felt too clean, the way hotel rooms feel clean when you know nothing belongs to you. I tried Dylan's phone and got the dull echo of a blocked call. The note on the counter didn't mention our daughter or the fund we'd built by skipping vacations and buying generic cereal. It did mention that he was sorry. Sorry has a way of landing like frost quiet everywhere. Mia pulled out a chair and sat opposite me. "He moved money yesterday," she said. No flourish, no tech kid bravado. She slid my laptop closer. "You left your bank app open last night after you checked the 529. I saw the text about a transfer approval." She waited to see if I'd be angry. I wasn't. I was a woman holding a damp match in the rain. "Tell me what you saw," I said. She took a breath, then spoke like a nurse reciting vitals. A withdrawal to an account with Dad's name on it. Then a payment flagged Westlake Title. I Googled it. It's a title office near Redview. She paused. I didn't go into anything that wasn't ours. I just read what popped up on the lock screen. And I wrote down times. The braid down her back had loosened in the night. I reached across and without thinking tucked a flyaway behind her ear. The familiar gesture surprised us both. On the stove, the kettle finally clicked off, sudden as a verdict. "We're going to breathe," I said, hearing a steadiness I didn't entirely feel. "Then we're going to do this right how she asked. By being boring," I said. "By being the kind of people paperwork loves." At the clinic, I spend my days building schedules and smoothing small crises until they lie flat. It turns out you can press the same palm against your own life. I called my supervisor and said there was a family emergency. She didn't ask for proof. Some voices carry their own documents. Back at the table, I opened my credit portal, the one I used to check my score after tax season. The site loaded in little blue pieces. I could feel Mia watching me, not the screen. I read the words out loud as they appeared partly for her and partly for myself. Place an alert, freeze my file, report identity misuse. Each click was an inhale, each confirmation an exhale. We were still in pajamas when I told the woman at our credit union that the account labeled College Mia had been emptied. I used my clinic voice, the one that sounds like I have a clipboard and time. Mia sat beside me with her hands folded, a child in a pew. The banker asked questions I could answer. Transfers, dates, names. I did not say mistress. I did not say betrayal. I said I'd like to open an investigation, and the banker said, "Of course," and wrote a case number on a small square of paper that looked too fragile to hold anything as heavy as us. We left the branch, and the air smelled like wet leaves. My phone buzzed. A message from an unfamiliar number blinked, then disappeared. I didn't chase it. I put the paper with the case number in my wallet behind Mia's second-grade school photo, where her teeth were still arguing with each other. In the car, Mia said, "Are you mad at me for seeing the texts?" "I'm mad at the person who made us need to," I said. She nodded, turned her face to the window, and let the town pass like a slideshow we hadn't bought tickets for. We drove to the station because in small towns, you learn early that a report made in daylight weighs more than a story told at night. The officer at the desk had a coffee stain on his sleeve and the kind of patience you only get from raising teenagers. He took our names, our address, the case number from the bank, and typed with 2 fingers the way I imagined my father once typed his first email. It wasn't cinematic, it was honest. The fluorescent lights hummed like a quiet argument. "Do you know where your husband is, Miss Hale?" he asked. "I know where he isn't," I said. Humor is one of grief's cheap disguises. It kept my hands from shaking. Mia sat a little straighter. "My dad works at Redview Logistics," she said. "He's been coming home later. He started using cash for gas." She stopped, bit her lip, and then whispered, "Sorry, I don't know if that's helpful." "It is," the officer said, and I loved him for that single sentence. He printed a sheet with our incident number and slid it across the desk like a truce. "This helps your bank process. If funds are recovered, they'll need this." Back home, the house had that post-storm light, sunny and disorganized. I made eggs because a day needs anchors, and Mia ate because kids are better at obeying biology than adults. When my phone pinged again, I recognized the pattern of Dylan's messages: an apology without a plan, a justification, wearing a tie, a line about how he'd invested in a future for all of us and just needed a week. It should have made me furious. Instead, it made me tired in the bones. Mia watched me read and stepped closer, as if approaching a stray dog. "Do you want me to block him?" she asked. "No," I said. "I want his words on record." After lunch, silence took a seat at our table. I opened my laptop, and the light from the screen painted our hands a faint cold blue. I typed a short message to the compliance inbox listed on Redview's website: plain facts, not accusations. Dates. Transfers I could account for. A line about how certain reimbursements looked unusual when compared to a second account name that appeared in our bank history. I attached the police incident slip and the case number from the credit union. Somewhere in my head, I heard the clinic's copier spit out forms page after page, making order out of weather. Mia watched the cursor blink. "Is that enough?" she asked. "It's enough to start," I said. "Truth tends to invite its cousins." She smiled for the first time all day, and in that small curve, I saw the child who used to clap for herself when she zipped her own jacket. Then the smile faltered. Her braid had loosened again. She redid it slowly, as if fixing hair could fix outcomes. The reply from Redview came quicker than I expected. A woman named Lila acknowledged receipt, thanked me for the documentation, and said internal review protocols would begin immediately. Her tone was professional, clipped, but there was a single sentence at the end that stuck to me like static. "We understand this is difficult." The afternoon stretched thin. The house kept producing small errands, laundry dishes, the plant on the sill that needed turning. I did each one on purpose, like stations on a private pilgrimage. Around 5, the sky turned the color of cooled metal. I brewed tea, and Mia brought her homework to the table. She writes numbers the way some people write prayers, deliberate, neat a space between every digit. She caught me staring. "What if he calls?" she asked. "Then we let him," I said, and surprised myself with how little fear was left in the sentence. She put her pencil down. "Mom, yes, if he cries, can I still be mad? You can be anything," I said, even two things at once. She nodded and returned to her math. The kettle hissed. I placed two mugs on the table like a promise I intended to keep. Evening arrived with a wind that rattled the maple outside, like bones telling a story. I answered emails from the clinic, moved shifts, pretended normal could be arranged with enough calendar invites. Mia drifted between homework and the piano she hardly touched, landing finally on a song she learned at 9. Her hands remembered what her mind had outgrown. Notes stumbled, then found each other. The house absorbed them and softened. At 9:30, my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. The screen gave me 3 options: accept, decline, or let it go to voicemail and live with the suspense. I answered. Nora Dillon said, skipping the greeting, stepping straight onto the ice. My cards aren't going through. I didn't rush to fill the silence. He did that for both of us. He talked about a bank error, a glitch, the incompetence of systems that didn't understand real life. When that didn't land, he switched angles and told me about the house near Westlake, with a yard where Mia could have a dog. He used her name like a key. It didn't open anything. Where did our daughter's money go, I asked. He cleared his throat. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. He started to explain the word leverage as if he were a professor and not a man who left his keys on my counter. He said this would put us ahead, that he'd already talked to people who understood value, and all we needed was a little time. I thought of our kitchen clock coughing another minute out of its lungs and felt something inside me still. Mia had walked in without sound and sat across from me. I turned the call to speaker and placed the phone on the table between us like evidence. Dad, she said, voice small but unshaking. There was a shift in the line, a breath he hadn't prepared to take. Hey, kiddo, you used my future to buy a yard. I'm not invited to, she said. I'm 12, not stupid. Dylan softened the way people do when they're losing. He said her name again, put a crack in it. He told her he was fixing it. He told her adults make complicated choices. He told her one day she'd understand. Mia looked at me and I nodded. We had decided earlier that truth would be the only language we spoke in this house. She stuck to it. Mom filed the reports, she said. The bank has a case, the police have a number. Your work has our email. You should answer theirs. He went quiet, and in that quiet, I heard the faint pattern of his breathing, the rhythm I used to fall asleep to. I did not remember when it stopped being comfort and started being data. I can come home, he said finally. We can talk. You can answer the people whose job it is to listen, I said. Then we'll see what's left to say. The call ended without a goodbye. The table felt heavier where the phone had been. Mia's eyes shone, but no tears fell. I reached for her hand, and she let me. Outside, the maple shivered again, shedding what it could to survive what was next. The next morning smelled like coffee and wet newspaper. I drove Mia to school because routines are bridges, and we needed as many as we could build. In the drop-off lane, she squeezed my fingers, then was gone, braids swinging backpack, thudding against the life she still got to keep. I sat there longer than I should have, engine idling, until a parent behind me tapped their horn with the patience of a person who wanted to be rude without a scene. I pulled away and let the town carry me. Back home, I opened my email and found 2 messages waiting, like twin sentries. The credit union updated our case. Certain transfers were flagged for reversal pending investigation. Redview's compliance office noted that reimbursement patterns associated with Dylan were under review, and an internal auditor named Lila would be in touch if they needed more information. The language was polite, tiled official. Under it, I felt the floor starting to hold. I spent the day at the clinic where fevers and insurance codes replaced the words that had colonized my brain. By late afternoon, the sky over Maple Ridge turned the color of an old bruise. I picked Mia up, and we drove to the library because the house carried too many echoes. We sat at a corner table under a lamp that hummed like a restrained hymn. Mia opened her laptop to work on social studies, and I opened mine to a blank document that I titled, What We Keep. I wrote down everything that mattered and nothing that didn't. The day the account went to 0, the sound of the kettle, the way an officer's kindness can fit on one line. I wrote so that later, I would not tell this story as a howl, but as a record. Mia slid her screen toward me. I made something, she said. On it was a page with simple headings: how to check your accounts, how to talk to your bank, what to say when you're scared, but need to sound steady. It wasn't a list, it was a conversation in her voice. She'd drawn a small cartoon of a kettle in the corner. It had eyes and looked like it knew too much. It's for the PTA, she said, suddenly shy. Maybe other families won't have to, you know. You can share whatever you want, I said. On one condition. What, that we print it and tape it to our fridge first? She laughed real and quick. A librarian glanced over, then returned to her computer. We stayed until the lights blinked us gently toward the door. On the way out, Mia slipped her hand into my coat pocket and left it there, a stowaway warmth against the cold. Weeks don't heal, but they stack. Investigations have a tempo, and we learn to breathe on the offbeats. Redview sent another email, this one longer, thick with phrases like internal controls and discrepancy review. There were no villains named, no verdicts thrown, just the clean mechanics of adults doing their jobs. The credit union restored a portion of the funds with a note about further action pending. The amount wasn't everything. It was enough to prove the world hadn't abandoned arithmetic. Dylan tried calling twice more and then stopped. Silence can feel like punishment or mercy depending on the day. Mia asked if he would come to her winter concert. I said I didn't know. She said she'd play anyway. She practiced in the living room with the windows reflecting her back to herself. Music doesn't cure much, but it escorts you across dangerous streets. On a Saturday morning, we drove to Westlake to see the house he'd wanted, because sometimes the worst thing you can do to a fantasy is stand in front of it. The yard was small, the fence a little crooked, the for sale sign still staked in the thawing ground. I thought about the dog he'd promised in a life where promises were made like coupons handed out, often honored rarely. Mia took a photo and then deleted it. That was her goodbye, or maybe mine. Back in Maple Ridge, the PTA meeting smelled like coffee and floor polish. Mia stood at the front with her page, the one with the kettle, and spoke in the even tone of a person who knows the room will follow. She didn't mention her father. She talked about what to do when you're scared and how fear sometimes makes people loud when what helps is quiet. Parents nodded. Some took photos. One woman dabbed at her eyes as if she'd been invited to feel something and accepted. We walked home in the early dark. The maple tree outside our house had given up nearly all its leaves. It looked honest that way. Inside, I taped Mia's page to the fridge and smoothed the corners with my palm. We stood there longer than the page required. Do you think he'll be okay? She asked. I think he'll be what he chooses, I said. So will we. That night, I dreamed of zeros turning back into numbers. In the morning, I woke to the kettle and the ordinary holiness of a day we still owned. I made tea. Mia asked for toast. The house breathed with us, not for us. When my phone buzzed, I didn't flinch. It was the clinic asking if I could cover a shift next week. I said yes. The future is many things. Today, it was a schedule I could keep. A month later, an email arrived from Redview that read like a bruise fading still there, no longer tender. Their internal review had concluded actions inconsistent with policy, and the matter had moved to whatever offices come next, when people who should have been careful were not. I forwarded it to the credit union, filed it in a folder I named after, and felt the smallest, sharpest click inside me. Not triumph, not revenge, something steadier alignment. We sat on our front steps as the sun folded itself behind the houses like laundry. Mia leaned into my shoulder and traced the seam of my jeans with one finger the way she used to when she was learning the alphabet and ran out of letters. Children remember by touch. Adults remember by paper. Somewhere between us, the new fund account existed modest protected hours. I have not rewritten Dylan as a monster because I don't want to carry a story that heavy. He is a man who chose a shortcut through someone else's future and got lost there. I am a woman who learned that you can return to yourself one form, one phone call, one steady sentence at a time. Mia is a girl who will grow up knowing that quiet is not the same thing as weak. People ask for happy endings, and I understand why. I used to be one of them. What we have is different. It is a life with locks that turn with numbers that add up with music drifting down the hallway and a page on our fridge that a child drew to keep other children safe. If that isn't happiness exactly, it's close enough to live inside. And most days, that's all the justice I need. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.